Teach me about the Great Lakes. Teach me about the Great Lakes. Welcome back to Teach Me About the Great Lakes, a twice-monthly podcast in which I, a Great Lakes novice, ask people who are smarter and harder working than I am to teach me all about the Great Lakes. And I am super fired up this week for a bunch of reasons, most of which are related to the fact that my in-laws are not here anymore, but some of which are related to the fact that we're here with Megan Gunn. Megan, how are you today?
I'm good, Stuart. How are you?
Man, I'm good. Actually, the real reason I'm excited is because spring is coming. I mean, it's already here. We had a beautiful week of spring, if you remember. And then we had
it snowed.
snow twice last week, which it's really not supposed to do in late April. Like, we're not supposed to celebrate Earth Day by, like sledding. But there we are. Anyway, but so with spring, one of my favorite things that happens is the cicadas emerge coming up later in the spring. And I've always been obsessed with these things because they look like aliens, like little tiny aliens. And they come out of the ground and they're really creepy, like exceptionally creepy. Anyway, we'll get into all this. But so we're going to talk about cicadas with someone who absolutely loves cicadas and knows a ton about them. And so it's not the Great Lakesiest topic, but it's environmental, it's relevant, so I thought we'd do it. But first, Megan, I have an embarrassing thing to admit to. I don't know if you've listened to our last episode.
I will not admit to whether or not I listened to the last episode.
Fair enough. I will not admit to it either. But it turns out at some point the depths of the Great Lakes came up, and I very confidently, in front of not one but two people, stated that Lake Michigan was the deepest of the Great Lakes. And well, it turns out actually Lake Michigan is not the deepest of the Great Lakes, but that takes us to this week's Great Lake factoid. Nope, that takes us to this week's Great Lakes factoid. It's about multiple lakes. It's a Great Lakes factoid, a Great Lakes factoid. It's a great factoid about the Great Lakes. So, Megan, it turns out Lake Michigan is not the deepest Great Lake. If you're going by maximum depth, the deepest, or the Great Lakes in order, are Superior, Michigan, Huron, Ontario, Erie. Or, as I now remember it, Smelly Men Helped Obese Elvis. Superior, Michigan, Huron, Ontario, and Erie are the Great Lakes in order of depth. And that is this week's Great Lake factoid.
I guess second to top is not too bad. At least it wasn't like the last one and you said it was the deepest.
Yeah, it wasn't Erie. No depth at all to Erie. Very shallow lake. Anyway, yeah, so who knows? Maybe I'll remember next time. Maybe I won't. I've lived here for like 3.5 years. I probably should know the depths of the Great Lakes at this point. But I'm doing that so we don't have to have a whole episode on it. So now we're just going to do that. Instead, we're going to have an episode on cicadas. And this is like a super fun year for cicadas. So I'm excited to talk about it. But let's actually just jump straight into our guest. I said we're going to do transition music, but I lied. We're just going straight to the guest. Our guest, I'm just so excited. I forget the music. We're good. Our guest this week is Dr. Jessica Ware. And Jessica is the Associate Curator of Odonata and Non-Holometabolous Minor Orders. She's the Principal Investigator of the Sackler Institute for Comparative Genomics, Associate Professor of the Richard Gilder Graduate School, all at the American Museum of Natural History. Jessica, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to convince you that cicadas are cool.
I didn't say they weren't cool. I said they were creepy. Yeah, but so Jessica is in addition to being I guess this would be an entomologist, she's also a cicada nut in the good way. She's a fanatic about cicadas. So we're going to get there. But Jessica, before we do, hold on. I can't even get through your title. So you're the Associate Curator of Odonata and Non-Holometabolous Minor Orders. So Odonata, that's like dragonflies, right?
Yeah, that's my specialty, actually, dragonflies and damselflies. I also work on Blattodia, which are termites and cockroaches. And both of those groups are members of this large assemblage called non-holometabola. And they're called that because they're like not something. So the holometabola are the insects that have complete metamorphosis. And if you've ever read like The Hungry Caterpillar, there's an egg and then a caterpillar and then a pupa and then a beautiful butterfly. That's holometabolous life, right? Where you have a complete reorganization of the body parts between the larval stage and the adult stage. But the non-holometabolous insects don't do that. So that includes things like praying mantises, dragonflies, mayflies, stoneflies, grasshoppers, crickets. I mean, they're all non-holometabolous because they don't have this larval pupa adult stage. It just goes egg, nymph. The nymph often looks just like a smaller version of the adult. and it just molts until it's slightly larger, and then it's the adult size.
Interesting. So moving into cicadas then, they do undergo a transformation. Are they non-holo metabolists in the way they do it too? I would guess so, if that's kind of your area of expertise.
Yeah, they're in the order Hemiptera, and all of the Hemiptera are non-holo metabolist insects. So they're true bugs. They're bugs, and they have a nymph that's underground that looks different from the adults because it has this other life space, right? So it's underground.
What are they doing while they're underground?
Well, for both the annual cicadas and the periodical ones, they're living and being, right? So they're alive and they're drinking xylem from the roots of trees, and they are molting. They go for periodical cicadas. I think they go through 5 different molts into adulthood, building up tissue and molting and growing, and then emerging as an adult.
That's very cool. Okay, so they go through the nymph stage is basically entirely underground, right? And then they emerge. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, for periodical cicadas, then they're developing in the kind of soil and dirt around the roots of trees, which is where it's their primary food source. They're imbibing, they're drinking xylem. And then when they go to emerge, they actually have like small spines on their forelegs, and you can kind of see them sometimes, the exuvia, the shed skin, still stuck in place, attached to the bark. And it's neat because you can actually see sometimes even like when insects shed their skin, then the lining of their organs are kind of like ripped out. So sometimes you can see these little white trails sticking out of the exuvia, and that's their trachea. No, it's cool. It's the coolest thing ever. Do you leave your lung lining around? I don't think you do.
It's a really good point. That might be why I'm not cool. I thought it was other reasons. But yeah. So you mentioned periodic cicadas, right? Those are ones that come out you hear about this every 17 years or however many years. Like, first of all, are all cicadas that way? Or are there some that are just always hanging out? And then secondly, like what determines how long they stay under when they come back?
So there are annual cicadas that emerge every year, and they don't get the same press. I mean, even though they have an interesting life story too, males are calling to try and signal to females, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the periodical ones, I think, that capture people's attention because every 13 years or every 17 years, then there's this kind of mass emergence. The cues for that emergence usually has to do with temperature. So nymphs that are in their final instar, when the soil reaches 64 degrees Fahrenheit, then there's a cue for them that signals them to emerge. And usually in these large numbers, trillions of insects or whatever the numbers are, you're shoveling them up off of your driveway. And so then I think that's just so spectacular that people talk about them more, even though there are many other species of cicada that are annual, that are out kind of every year.
I have a silly question. So the ones that come out every 13 or 17 years, do they just have a really long instar phase, or are these ones like they're developing over and over and then they just all appear when the temperature is right?
So the ones that are underground for 13 or 17 years, they have 5 instars, but I think it's like the length of time period of each of those instars is longer, obviously, than what would be for an annual cicada.
So it's a long time to be underground.
Yeah, it is a long time. Can they see under there? Like, I mean, they have these beady, gross eyes. Like, do they, when they're underground, they don't use those, I guess, right? Are those part of that, or do they not come out till they're an adult?
I think that there's not that much known about the nymphal vision. Like, I don't know that anyone's ever looked at opsin pigments or things like that, for example, which is often the pigment that we look at for insects for vision and their ability to see color. I think that what largely is understood is that while they're underground consuming the xylem, they're just basically in this little excavation bathed in their own liquidy, sugary feces. And they just are, having these biochemical cascades, these hormonal cascades that lead them to molt at these, regimented times until either 13 or 17 years have passed. Because there are stragglers that come out early. And those are, so it's usually like roughly 13 or 17 years with these kind of false emergences that come out sometimes a little bit earlier.
So I feel like even recently that there was like a 17-year emergence. So I feel like I have so many questions. Is there a time period? Like, is it every 17 years we wait for another emergence, or is it like every few years we have a 17-year emergence? Like 100-year floods. 100-year floods don't wait until every 100 years we don't get it. Just happens when it happens, especially more so recently.
Well, there's 12 broods that are 17 years on 17-year cycles, and 3 broods that are on 13-year cycles, and they're not all starting at the same time point. So pretty much every year, or almost every year, you can go somewhere on the eastern part of the United States and see a brood emergence. I think what people are excited about this particular brood emergence that's happening this year is because this is a particularly large one. So some of the broods are really large and some of the broods are less large. And this brood, which comprises 3 different species, is like a really large one. It's one of the largest. So it's going to be loud and like very, very noticeable.
How many species of cicada are there?
I think there's over 3,000 species of cicada, including they're mostly annual cicadas. There's far, 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 far fewer species of periodical cicadas.
So, and we happen to have 3 coming out now, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to make me sad here, I think, because you said that there are 12 of them. They're identified by numbers, is that right? So this is, the famous one is not going to be pronounced Brood X. It's going to be pronounced Brood 10, isn't it?
Yeah, the Roman numerals.
Yeah, I was so excited. I saw Brood X, and I was like, yes, it's the edgy brood. You know, like, but so this is Brood 10, and so this is like one of the notably loud ones. It's emerging in a lot of places, but not everywhere, I guess, is my understanding. Is that right? It's kind of a patchy distribution.
Yeah, I mean, many of the broods are kind of patchy in their distribution, even in their local region. Like it's going to be coming out in New Jersey, but it's kind of patchy where it is in New Jersey. But Brood 10 has a pretty wide range because it goes, as far south as, Knoxville, like eastern Tennessee, West Virginia, but then, up to Indiana, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So it's going to be across this kind of swath with concentrations in areas like Princeton, which is near where I live, Washington, D.C. Like there's some parts that will be very dense, you imagine, in terms of numbers, and others will be a little bit more scraggly.
And if you look online, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes, you can get like some maps of the distribution. I think we should get Brood 10 here in West Lafayette this year, which is why I got fascinated by this whole deal, because I hate sleep, apparently. But is it because there are just so many of them that this is a louder brood? Or is there something about the specific species of cicada that makes them louder?
I think that part of it is sheer numbers. Sheer numbers lead to the volume. But these particular 3 species are known to call at 100 decibels or so. So that's pretty loud. That's pretty loud. And it's thank you evolution, right? Hundreds of millions of years, right, of evolution has led this organ, this male organ, to be able to allow them to make really long, loud calls. And females listen to the song, the kind of rhythm and pattern tells us something about the species it's calling them. The kind of volume and duration tells us something about the quality of male for sexual selection to act on.
Now, I want to get into that, but hold on. You said 100 decibels up to? I assume that's a peak, but that's like motorcycle loud, I think.
Yeah, jackhammers, rock concert.
Who knew cicadas are hazardous to your hearing, at least potentially? Oh my goodness.
So they're mating, so they're looking for mates. That's what the sound is that we're going to be hearing.
I hope the sound is not them actually mating. That would, that'd be a different podcast. But
yeah, that's the sound of them, like of males trying to attract females. And females make a noise too, sort of. It's not really a noise; it's like a rustling sound where she will kind of like rub her wings against each other and make sort of a rustling sound. But that loud kind of that noise, that's male.
I see. And so, is it the kind of thing? Is it like the louder the noise, the more attractive the male is, or is it? We don't know.
Yeah, the volume. I mean, females are listening, so it's energetically expensive to make a loud, long noise, especially in the warmest parts of the day. So presumably, those are some cues. Depending on what hypothesis you believe it. Maybe it's the sexy sons hypothesis where it makes it so that her sons will also be able to make that loud call and be chosen. Like there's lots of different ways you could kind of phrase it, but yeah, that's the strategy, presumably.
The hypotheses in your field are a lot cooler than the hypotheses in my field, I have to say.
You don't have a sexy lake, sexy sons hypothesis?
No, I do now.
Are they eating anything when they're above ground to re-energize themselves, or is it just everything that they've stored for the last 17 years that they're using?
Yeah, it's what they've stored, because primarily their goal as the adult stage is to find a mate, to lay the eggs, and then it's death.
And it's not very long, right? Is each, like once they emerge, is it a few weeks?
Yeah, it's a really short period of time. And then the females will make these little slits in the kind of twigs of the small branches of trees, and she'll lay eggs. And you can sometimes even see them, they're like little overposition scars. And then those eggs will hatch, and then the nymphs will kind of drop to the soil and then burrow under the ground.
Oh, that's interesting. So how do they make the slits? Do they have, is it like teeth, or do they have, a little razor blade they carry? What's the deal?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of insects actually have their own personal sort of razor blade in their genitals, which is their ovipositor, their egg-laying apparatus, and it's used to make slits. Or in dragonflies that lay their eggs in plants, for example, they also cut a little hole plant material. It's a pretty useful tool, and it's been modified a bunch of times, including in things like, bee ants and wasps that have stingers. They're just a modified ovipositor.
So behind the curtains here for you, Jessica, and for our listeners, what we do is we give our shows a title based on, something the guest says. And we like the title to be evocative. And it's going to be hard to choose. Like so far, what I've written down is eating their own liquidy, sugary feces. Entomologists usually get hot under the collar, or razor blade in their genitals. So it's
those are all winning.
Yeah, they're all winners there. That's really good. So you mentioned temperature as a driver. That actually makes me concerned now that I think about it. Is there a climate issue here? So I mean, like this spring, for example, we had a really warm couple of weeks, and now it's cold again. But like overall, things are getting warmer. So is there a climate concern with cicadas in terms of their emergence timing and breeding patterns and things like that, or do we not know?
Yeah, indeed, there is some concern. And in fact, so Chris Simon is a researcher at University of Connecticut, and she just wrote a piece this spring, actually, that was really terrific, specifically talking about that and about how, the prediction is that broods, the timing will kind of be off as temperatures get warmer for longer periods of time and earlier in the season. And there's some even suggestion that, people have made that maybe, because 13-year cicadas tend to be further south and 17-year cicadas tend to be further north. And so it's possible that around 500,000 years ago, based on Chris Simon's work, that when periodical cicadas first kind of diversified, that, everything was 17. And then with, warmer temperatures, things are now, or in warmer temperatures, things move to a 13-year. Perhaps, Chris surmises maybe there'll be a 9-year cicada or something like that.
Wow.
So I think this is definitely impacted by temperature, and we could imagine in a future warmer world that we might have different cycles for these broods.
So would that just mean more cicadas then, and not like it doesn't sound like it's going to kill them?
All right, maybe you're excited about this, Jessica. Maybe you're right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the strategy, the thing that's tricky is that part of the strategy that they're using is a satiation strategy, where by emerging in such huge, numbers of individuals, presumably birds and, your average cat or dog take out quite a few of them, but hopefully you make it to pass on your genes to the next generation. And with just stragglers here and there, you're more vulnerable and you're more visible to predators. So, there should be selection if, presumably this satiation strategy continues as their main mode of protection against predation. There should be selection on the timing to be, pretty tight so that they all still come out at the same time.
But it's possible that it can be totally disrupted by climate stuff. Maybe not, but right. It's, oh, geez.
Well, there were some of brood chem that emerged a couple of years ago, and they were, picked off quickly by birds and what have you.
Yeah, we link a lot of times on our work Slack to this the picture of like the million little fish shaped like a big fish eating someone, and it says organize. And I won't get into the politics of that image, but it's the same idea, right? It's that yeah, interesting. Okay, so Brood 10, Brood X, call it what you want. Coming out soon. Maybe by the time you hear this, May 3rd, maybe a few weeks after that, and then it will be here and go away, and there'll be more broods, But so a lot of cool things about cicadas you've taught us, including their entrails strewn about the trees, and their razor blade sex organs, and the liquidy, sugary feces part. So that's all good. But are there any other cool cicada factoids that you want to kind of tell us about?
Well, I mean, one thing that I always think is kind of interesting about periodical cicadas. I'm from Canada. I'm from Ontario. which is why I knew that Lake Superior was the deepest lake, by the way. BT Dub, I would have won that quiz contest. But no, I mean, I didn't really hear about them. And then when I moved to the United States, it's like this thing on the Eastern Seaboard. And so I wondered for a while, how come I never learned about this? And maybe it's just not commonly known. No, it was just I'm a dummy and I didn't learn about it. So when you look at the literature, people have been talking about these periodical cicadas for a very long time. For as long as there have been European colonists, people have been writing in their notes. But, First Nations people that lived in the eastern parts of the United States also had, separate names for annual and periodical cicadas and routinely ate cicadas. So I just think it's I like the idea of thinking that just as we're kind of excited about Brood 10 coming out now, people have ever been excited about Brood 10 and Brood 9. They didn't have it, maybe didn't call them those Roman numerals, but they were excited about them coming because they're a source of food and, a signal of, it's a way to keep time, I suppose. 17 years have passed.
I hadn't thought about them being a food source birds, yeah, but it makes sense that humans would have eaten them too they're there.
Yeah, I'm going to eat some for sure.
That was actually my next question is, have you? It sounds like not yet.
Well, I've eaten cicadas before, but I've not done like a proper cook-up of them. So this year, with a colleague who's an entomophagy kind of cooking expert, I think we're going to try and cook some different life stages. Joseph Yoon from Brooklyn Bugs. We're going to really, do a proper cook-up and really eat them right. So I'm really looking forward to it. A human pursuit. I'm sure my dogs and cats are going to eat them too. I mean, why wouldn't? That's a perfectly good food source there.
So what is a proper cook-up, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, I want it seasoned. I want it, fricasseed or something, give it a little heat to it.
I'm envisioning hush puppies, right?
I think I don't want, I've eaten, I've tasted, I wouldn't say you really eat them, but I've tasted dragonfly wings before and they're very crunchy. So I'm going to take the wings off, I think, and just really go for the body.
Well, that's actually fascinating, all the stuff that you're telling us about cicadas, about Brood 10, about their life cycle and all that. But Jessica, that's actually not why we invited you here on Teach Me About the Great Lakes this week. The reason we invite you on Teach Me About the Great Lakes is to ask you these two questions, the first of which I am now scared to ask you. And the first one is this. If you could choose to have a great donut for breakfast or a great sandwich for lunch, which would you choose?
I would always choose sandwich because I don't have a sweet tooth. So I'm team savory for sure. So I would go with a delicious sandwich, a Dagwood sandwich anytime.
A Dagwood sandwich anytime. And I forgot to ask where you're located.
I'm in New Jersey, in the part of New Jersey that may or may not exist called Central New Jersey that people debate about all the time. In a town that's near Princeton. It's a town called Cranberry. Famous because in the Orson Welles broadcast of War of the Worlds, this was the first town that the aliens annihilated was Cranberry, New Jersey. And there's a plaque. There's a plaque in our town for it. So there you go.
That's fun.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, next time I'm in Central New Jersey in Cranberry, which may be near where my mother grew up. I will Google that and figure it out. Anyway, next time I'm in Cranberry, New Jersey, where can I go to get a really great sandwich?
Well, so there's this, well, here you go, Crocodile. I'm going to advertise you. There's a little deli called Crocodile, which I was really unconvinced of because it's unassuming in a strip mall, kind of in right 5 minutes from my house. But it's actually delicious. And everybody that goes there raves about it. And everybody talks about Crocodile. So they have delicious sandwiches, vegetarian, non-vegetarian. It's delicious.
Awesome. And yes, I can confirm that Cranberry, New Jersey is near my mother's birthplace of Westfield, New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I'm sure the last time I went to the American Museum of Natural History was visiting my grandmother in Westfield, but it would have been in the 90s at this point, I think. So.
Nice. You have to come back and visit.
I have a related sandwich question. Would you eat a cicada sandwich?
I would. I would eat any insect probably because they're so high in protein. There's no fat.
Yeah, the media is always trying to get us to eat insects. I'm not in there.
But it's the wave of the future.
The wave of the future. Yeah. Well, I'm not. I'm in this way. I'm happy to be completely unprogressive, I suppose. Thomas, our director brought me a cricket candy bar. It's like chocolate with a bunch of cricket meal in it. And hold on, my daughter taught me how I'm supposed to say this. It was not to my taste.
My son says, I didn't care for it. That's what my son says. I didn't care for it.
How would you make right now, if I'm going to go out and catch a couple of these brood tenors and make a sandwich, what should I do? Like, what do you think would go on a cicada sandwich, a cicandwich?
Well, my colleague Steve says that the periodical ones, cicadas in general, taste very much like asparagus. He thinks they taste very green because they're always just feeding on xylem. So maybe you could use it almost like a lettuce, so I'm picturing a tuna or egg salad with some of this as kind of your lettuce, your crunch in this thing that would give it a bit of green taste.
Yeah, so they're naturally crunchy. I wouldn't have to fry it or roast it or anything, as far as you know.
Well, I like to cook. I mean, I have eaten insects before, different kinds of insects, and I always like to give them a cook, just because insects, like anything else, can have, nematodes, or I just want to give them a little heat before
you don't need bugs in your bugs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to give them a little heat and then pop them on my sandwich.
And so the second question is this, and you can look your link in the show notes, and we'll have Crocodile linked up there, and I'll definitely check it out. So you're a museum curator and an entomologist. What is it that makes you good at that job? Like, what are some key skills for what you do?
Well, I think you have to be curious. So we have 23 million specimens of insects in our collection. And you could, if you weren't a curious person, then those specimens are just sitting there, right? So you have to be kind of a curious person. And, a big part of the job is doing research and asking questions and testing hypotheses about the evolutionary history of particular groups. And so being a museum curator, having all those specimens there, if you're creative and you like asking, questions and making discoveries, it's a pretty great job.
Well, Dr. Jessica Ware, Associate Curator of Odonata Non-Holometabolist Minor Orders, an Associate Professor of the Richard Gilder Graduate School at the American Museum of Natural History. Where can people go to find out more about your work?
You could look on my website, jessicalwarelab.com, or you could find me on social media. I'm on Twitter at Jessica L. Ware Lab, and also on Instagram, Jessica Lee Ware 42, Lee Ware 42. I don't know why 42, but I just always seem to add that to my handles. So if you want dragonfly photos on Instagram and research talk on Twitter.
I do. I definitely do. Great. Well, Jessica Ware, thank you so much for coming on and teaching us all about the Great Lakes.
Thanks for having me.
Stuart, I don't think I've ever seen you make so many faces during an episode. But I was feeling the same way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, bugs are just terrifying. And these things are, I mean, have you seen them when they crawl out of the ground, like right before, before they finish morphing or whatever? They're just terrifying.
No, that was one of the things that I was thinking about. I remember hearing them growing up, and I remember seeing their exoskeletons on trees. And I had one on the trash can a few years ago, but I've never seen them emerge.
It's like little aliens. It's like they're from another world. Well, I'll see about, I never did growing up. We had them in New Orleans. I know, because we used to see the shells like on trees. I should ask them. I don't know what ones are down there. They must be the 13-year ones or whatever. Yeah, but about 3 a year I'll see here, just walking across the sidewalk, and they creep, and they really do. They look like the bad guys in Doom or some video, not that I play video games, but I think that's a video game where they had like alien bad guys. Anyway, I'll assume it is, and that's what they look like. And it's like legit terrifying, because they do look like alien creatures that have invaded, and you just wonder what their powers are, right? And, Jessica played it cool, but you do wonder what their powers are. So, Megan, where can people go to find out more about the work that you do? Oh, no, hold on. Before you get there, everybody look down right now at your podcast player, and you should hopefully maybe see our brand new artwork that we have done.
Oh, it's so nice.
It is so nice. Our friend and designer, Joel Davenport, worked with us to get that done. And it's super fun. It sticks out. It's fun. It's there's a couple little things, if you dig deep, you can find that are buried, little Easter eggs in there. And it's appropriately kind of overwrought for the TV, for this show. It's like just a bunch of stuff in there. It's like jam it all in there and work it out in the end. Yep. Yeah.
I really enjoyed looking for the Easter eggs.
Yes. So thank you, Joel, for that. Thanks everybody. Thank you, Joel, for that. That's all I would say. So now, Megan, where can people go to find out more about the work that you're doing?
People can find me on Instagram at The Familiar Faces Project, and then on Twitter at _TFFP.
There you go. And you can find out more about the work that we do at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant at iiseagrant.org or on many social medias at ILIN Sea Grant. And with that, thank you for listening, everybody. Stay safe out there. The spring is coming. Get vaccinated. Go get vaccinated. Have you been vaccinated?
Yes, today's Monday. Today was my last of my second shot, waiting period.
Oh, so this is like day 14
I'm done.
for you. Yeah, Wednesday is for me. And then I'll be, licking flagpoles and I don't even know what else, but I'll be out there.
Go do it.
Just go do it. It's not hard. I mean, you get a little dead arm, but you know what? You don't get COVID. So
COVID.
Yeah, take a little dead arm. No big deal. Take a day off work. Use it as an excuse. It's all good. Yeah. Anyway, in between now and then, go get vaccinated if you haven't been. And thanks for listening. Keep grading those lakes.